Okay. So before we get started, I wanted to leave a little space for any questions that you guys have about the abdominal workouts or the pelvic floor workouts that we've been doing, or about any of the assignments that have been on there, like the questions that you've been answering. I loved your answers that you've been putting on there. I loved how you guys are thinking about these things. But do you have any specific questions for me, since we didn't really get to do our office hour yesterday? Any questions about anything?
For me, maybe the only question is like a map of the program a little bit. Like, are we working on individual pieces to put together, or?
Yes.
Yeah, that good.
Yeah, good question. Thank you. And I can do that. That is a good, that's good feedback for me to know that that would be helpful for you. Basically, how I have the program structured, just so you know kind of what we're doing, is these first couple of weeks are basically focusing on our main, what I like to call anchor points. And so you have your pelvic floor, you have your deep abdominals, your glutes, and your mid back. So we're going to go through those 4 anchor points. We're almost there. We have the glutes and the mid back. And then basically what we're doing each week is activating those muscle groups. So we're really focusing mostly on them 1 week at a time. And I kind of am adding in, as you have seen, I try to balance it a little bit. So on our deep abdominal week, we were doing a little bit of mid-back work, right? Without throwing in too much that you don't know yet. So once we get past those initial 4 weeks, we are going to get 5 weeks, since we started kind of with breathing exercises in the first week. We are going to get into more of a stabilization phase where you guys know all the basic movements. So we're going to be doing those and getting you to where, since you've activated those muscle groups, we're going to start slowly strengthening them. And then we will be moving into a strengthening phase, which will be even more challenging. And those workouts are going to be largely whole body workouts. And the reason why I do mostly whole body workouts rather than like glute day and, arm day and mid back day, which I think a lot of people kind of think about in a gym setting or in a programming setting, if you've ever encountered that, is because our workouts are pretty short and, kind of compact. And so by doing kind of a whole body workout, you are getting a good variety of exercises in a short amount of time. And it's kind of where we'll be doing mostly kind of like a HIIT, like a high intensity interval kind of format for each workout. And again, most of my exercises aren't super high intensity. Like they are really just thinking about subtle movements and, and we're not going to be doing anything that's going to leave you completely exhausted or so sore that you can't function after, right? Because that's not the goal. It's to help you feel good, to help you feel more stable and stronger, and feel like more functional, not less, right? So does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Cool. I will come up with something that's visual too, because I like that idea. Thank you for that feedback. And I think that will be easier for you to understand too, or better than just me explaining it.
Can I ask a question about the brace?
Yes.
You use the like thumbtack your belly button to your spine.
Yeah.
But like don't move it in. Kind of like, is it like you're about to get punched and you're kind of like bracing for the impact? Or could you explain the brace a bit more?
Yes, thank you for that question. So you are moving your belly button in, and I'll have to show you. There's a video in the deep abdominal classwork section under that topic. There is a video, and maybe if I get a second, I'll play it for you again. You are moving your belly button in. What I don't want you to do is to suck in. So there's a difference, right, between sucking in and just pulling your belly button in towards your spine, right? So you guys don't mind, I'm going to show you actually with my own belly, because I know sometimes it helps to have that visual, and I hope you guys are okay with that. So when you're sucking in, right, you're kind of like, you're sucking air into your body, and then you are pulling your ribs up so that your belly gets flatter, right? Because like say you're trying to pull your pants up, right? You're trying to pull your pants all the way up, you're like, you take a big breath in and you want to make it nice and flat so you can like button your pants, right? Does that make sense when I say suck in? That's what I'm talking about. And I don't want you to do that, because what happens there is that your ribs flare up like this. So you end up bending backwards a little bit and your ribs come up. What I want you to do instead is, here's your belly button. You're just gently bringing it in toward your spine. So I'm not pulling up here. I'm exhaling, and my belly button is going toward my spine. And you can see like it's a very subtle, it's not a big, huge movement, right? It's just, there's it relaxed, exhale, tacking it to my spine. So it does go in, but I don't want you to throw your shoulders back or pull your ribs up at all. And it has a lot to do with how you're breathing as well. You're exhaling as your belly button is drawing in toward your spine. You're not sucking air in order to flatten your belly. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you for the demonstration. Was helpful.
You're welcome. I feel like it helps to kind of see someone's body. Not that, I mean, I think it looks different for everybody's body, but sometimes that can be helpful to get a little bit of a visual. Hey, Carolyn.
Hi.
Yes, but I think I like to distinguish between sucking in and drawing that belly button in, because I think that when a lot of people think about pulling their belly button in, that's what they think of doing, is that thing that we do sometimes when we're trying to like button something tight around our bellies, and we end up kind of like lifting everything up, and like holding our breath, right? And that is not what we are doing. We are exhaling, and we are gently just bringing our belly button in, and then we're pulling up our pelvic floor. And what that's doing is activating those deep abdominals and the pelvic floor together in order to really stabilize our core and get that good pressure in the abdomen, so that when we do that big exertion that we're doing, we are stable and strong around our core. Cool. Good. Good. Okay, Carolyn, I was just leaving some space for everybody to ask questions before we get started with our glutes. Did you have any questions or anything related to what we've already covered the last couple of weeks, or anything that you want to share about your experience with the program thus far, or anything like that?
All I want to say is that I love it. I don't actually end up doing it till like 10 o'clock at night, because I'm so slammed busy right now. But I try my best and I enjoy it. Olin likes to laugh at me when I'm working out at 10 o'clock. But I do it when I can, and I love it. And so keep sending me the recordings, because I can't always make it. I go to work at 9 in the morning. So that's, I mean,
Yeah.
but I enjoy it, and I've learned a lot. So I appreciate it.
Good. Good. That's amazing. Well done. I mean, doing it at that's what really it's all about, is finding those times when you have the time and space to do it. And for us, it's not always going to be at that time that everybody thinks of when you think of working out, right? Like it's not going to be at 6 o'clock in the morning or the 4 a.m. boot camp. It's like we just can fit it in where we can fit it in, and you make it work for you, and you find what's best for you, right? So you're doing a great job. You're fitting it in where you can. I'm so glad you're learning things. At any point, if you have questions, I hope you still feel like you can ask them on the classroom or send me a message. And if anybody's not able to make it to the live, make sure if you have any questions or concerns or anything, you message me and let me know, because I'm here.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Are we ready to start with our glutes? Okay. Today is reconnecting with our glutes. And why? Why are we reconnecting with our glutes? Why do we care about our glutes, right? This is one of those topics, another one of the topics that I feel like, especially in the fitness world, I think we all kind of know what our glutes are, and we know how to work on them to a certain extent, or we see a lot of examples of people working on their glutes, right? But it is very, very centered on aesthetic changes and the aesthetic value of your glutes, right? Meaning like how it looks to other people. And not much thought is put into, I mean, I'm just saying in general, right? There's always exceptions, but there isn't always a lot of thought put into what our glutes are actually for, or what their function might actually be, especially in terms of how our bodies kind of move on a daily basis. A lot of when we do learn about their function, it's about like doing something really intense, like squats, like big giant squats with a barbell. And there's nothing wrong with that. Those are fun too. But on a daily basis, I don't know that we're given a lot of information on why, what do our glutes even really do for us? And unfortunately, I feel like that is the case for a lot of our body knowledge, is we aren't really taught a whole lot about function, and instead we are taught more about how it is seen by others and how we can change it in a way that is more appropriate or more acceptable for others to look upon, right? And that is the function of exercise for us, is to change our bodies in a way that is acceptable, or that it can now look the way it should to others, as opposed to understanding our bodies and what they actually do for us. And I think the glutes are a really big one for that. And unfortunately, especially in the prenatal postpartum space, or in the postpartum space, I think sometimes, because we have those changes in our pelvis, sometimes the way that our backsides look after postpartum can get a lot of attention, rather than what those glute muscles are actually doing for us and how they're supporting us in that postpartum period of time, which is a whole heck of a lot. Instead, we're going to learn what function our glutes serve, so that we can fully understand why we have them, other than just as something that people look at, right? Because our butts are cute. I know they are, but they serve a really big function in our lives too. So when we think about pregnancy, we've seen this image before. We end up really very rounded forward, right? We've talked about that already, especially in our upper body, because we have all that weight on our front line on the upper part of our bodies. And that can add to tightness in our front line. So tightness in our glutes, and sometimes even in our abdominal areas and our hip flexors. And that kind of leads to some compensation and weaknesses in our back line. So this week, I'm going to have us focus on both our glutes and our mid back, as I've already started doing with you guys. I think what we're noticing is that our pelvis, or what I'm hoping you're noticing, is that our pelvis and our shoulder girdle up here are really very intertwined. And so sometimes when we have compensations in our pelvis, we start to feel tightness and pain and things in our upper back, right? And our shoulders and our neck and things like that. We've been focusing on strengthening our abdominal muscles and our pelvic floor muscles, which have this really big impact on our front line. And as we move into our glutes and our mid back, we're going to create more tension and strength along the back line of our body, which should allow our shoulder and pelvic girdles to really support us and allow for freedom of movement of things like our arms and shoulders and our legs, right? So I know that's kind of like nebulous and it's a lot to think of, but really the most important thing is realizing like our bodies are super intertwined and we are really looking for balance here. And so we've got the front line pretty well covered with our deep abdominals and partially with our pelvic floor. And now we're going to think about that back line in the last 2 weeks of these activating weeks that we're doing. Okay. So here's a nice little schematic of some of the more common pain points during pregnancy and postpartum. And some of you might relate, a lot of you might relate to these. As I already mentioned, that added weight to the front line during pregnancy can cause changes in the way that we stand, which can lead to weakness in the glutes and tightness and pain in the surrounding joints and musculature in that area. So this can lead to things like sacroiliac joint pain, which is the joint between the tailbone and the back of your pelvis, which can feel like low back pain. So here's my little thing. Here's the back side. So this is looking at you from your back side, and you have your tailbone here, and you actually have joints right here. You can see where the lines are right there, where your pelvis connects to that tailbone and your spine. And you can, sometimes we experience what we think is sciatic pain, and what's really happening is you have sacroiliac joint pain. And so when you have instability in your pelvis, a lot of times we feel it in those spots where we have joints in our pelvis. And I think a lot of people don't even realize we have joints in our pelvis because we imagine it as this just really solid thing in the center of our bodies. And there are actually points of connection that it has with our spine and the front of your body. And when we go through pregnancy, we'll talk about this more, but we can have some laxity in that area, some movement. It can cause some pain, right? So you could have pain there, like on your tailbone, which can feel like low back pain. You can have pubic symphysis pain, which is that joint in the front of your pelvis. So this one here, so this is your front. You can see right here, you have a joint, and that can be painful as well. And up here where you have your femur connects to your pelvis. So all these areas where there's connecting points, you can have that, you can experience that pain. So activating and strengthening our glutes and releasing the other tight muscles around that are helping to stabilize our pelvis instead that's going to help us with some of the pelvic instability and the pain points that occur postpartum, even years postpartum. And glute strengthening can be so vital as we move more into high impact movements as well, even things like running or even walking for long distances, jumping, things like that, because we really need that pelvic stability. Otherwise, it could lead to even more issues into the future. There are muscles and tissues that are connected to your knees. There are nerves involved and even more complex connections to your shoulder girdle and your neck, like we were talking about before. So glute strengthening is really foundational to creating that feeling of stability and injury prevention all over your body, right? It's not just your pelvis, it's everywhere. You know, your pelvis is really just like a center point for so many things, so many connections. So what and where are your glutes? The gluteus maximus is probably the most widely known muscle, actually. Like most people, if you ask them to name a muscle, they might say gluteus maximus. And most people kind of know where it is, right? It is the largest, it's one of the largest muscles, and it helps with things like thigh extension and turning the thigh inwards. So it really helps us to kind of stand up. It's called an extensor muscle. So it helps us to stand very straight, which I don't think we often think of it as that, but as if you think about doing a squat, right? That's what our glutes are, what help us to come back up into a standing position, right? They help us extend back upward. So we have our gluteus maximus. And then we actually have other glute muscles as well that we don't often really even know about. We have the gluteus minimus and the medius, which are actually going to be the main muscles that we'll be focusing on as we do our exercises. They help with moving the thigh away from the middle of your body and keeping your pelvis level when one leg is up and the other leg is down, right? So you can imagine when you're walking, that's really important because when you walk, you have one leg come up and the other leg stays on the ground and you switch back and forth. And that can cause some instability in your pelvis as it's moving back and forth, right? You have a lot of back and forth movement with running and walking. And so in order to keep that pelvic stabilization, you need glutes that are there to really support your pelvis. During pregnancy, again, we experience some laxity in that pelvis in order to prepare for the actual birthing process, right? And I'm sure most of you are aware of that. And then postpartum, those hormonal changes that we go through can actually lead to continuation of joint laxity. So as you saw in those previous, I want to show you guys too on here. Maybe on my little model. Again, your pelvis has joints in it. So you have a joint right here on the front, and you have joints here on the back that connect to your spine and your tailbone. And during pregnancy, you want those to move because you need the baby to move its head through your pelvis, right? And it needs to shift. But those hormones that lead to that shifting can extend into the postpartum period and can cause a lot of compensations and things that kind of lead us to start to compensate with other muscle groups, right? Our hip flexors and our other muscles, we use those other muscles that like to kind of hold on when our stabilizing muscles don't want to do the work, and they start to hold on and to support our pelvis, which could lead to things like chronic pelvic pain, low back pain, and compensations in some other kind of surprising places because our pelvic girdle is so interconnected with the rest of our body. So even places like our jaw, right? We have some jaw problems that can be interconnected with our pelvic issues as well, right? So the one other thing to consider, and I want to make sure, I'll show you in a minute again on our model, kind of how our glutes are supporting us and how our hip flexors are kind of taking over for us. But one of the main hip flexors that are often kind of included in our glute when talking about our glutes is a hip flexor called the tensor fascia latae. I'm not really sure. I always want to say latte, but I don't think that's how they say it. But generally, what it's referred to is the TFL, just so you're not saying all of those lovely words all the time. That is the muscle that we've been releasing with our ball when we do our hip flexor release. It does quite a bit for us. It rotates that thigh inward like the glute medius and minimus. It also rotates it outward and does some work to stabilize the hip and the knee. This particular muscle really likes to take over for the glute mid and can become really tight as a result of overworking, which is why we do that release work. You can also imagine it being affected by a lack of a neutral pelvis, right? So you can see here that it connects to the top of the hip. And then it connects to the IT band, which is this band that kind of goes along the side of your leg, all the way down to your knee. So sometimes alterations in our posture and how we hold our posture can affect us in ways we don't expect, like knee pain, right? So you may experience some tightness or some knee pain because this hip flexor is helping you to stabilize your pelvis, especially if you are holding your pelvis in a position that requires a tight tensor fasciae latae to hold it in place, right? And that can go all the way down to your knees. The last muscle we'll talk about, which is usually more associated with deep glute musculature of your pelvic floor, is the piriformis. This small muscle rotates the thigh outward while it's extended, moves the thigh away from your center line, and also stabilizes the top of the femur in your hip socket. So like the TFL, it shares a few functions with the glute min and max and medius, and it likes to take over for them, which is why we tend to focus on releasing it before and after our glute work. So the thing to take away from all of this, rather than, you don't have to memorize what all these things do, but recognizing that a lot of these muscles do the same action, and some of these muscles are meant to do those actions in more of a stabilizing environment where you are just standing and doing daily functional movements, kind of working at like a low 20, 30%, things like that. And others are meant to do bigger movements and do, really hold on tight, and they tend to get overworked when they start doing the stabilizing work. They get tired, they get tight, and then they start, because they're compensating for the work that your glutes are not doing, they just get very tight. They can get very painful. And in the case of the piriformis, that can affect your sciatica. So if you're having sciatica pain, it may, rather than it being an actual issue with the nerve, it may be that your piriformis is super, super tight and it's affecting the sciatic nerve. So I like this picture because it shows some of the complexity of our musculature, but also it shows how close our sciatic nerve is to our piriformis. Your sciatic nerve is right there below it. And for a small portion of the population, the sciatic nerve can even run right through the piriformis. But typically it runs right between the piriformis and the obturator internus, which is one of those major pelvic floor muscles that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. And when these muscles get tight, so you can imagine having that hypertonic pelvic floor, a tight piriformis that's taking over for your glutes, it can cause irritation in your sciatic nerve. So sometimes something as simple as releasing the piriformis muscle can really do wonders for helping with things like sciatic pain. So you can see here, let me point these out. This is your piriformis right here where the arrow is pointing, and that yellow thing is your sciatic nerve. And so you can imagine if this is really, really tight, it's kind of pushing into, or it's affecting this nerve that's like right there underneath it. So same thing over here, just in a different kind of view. And I like to go over this because a lot of people experience sciatic pain, and it's just, it feels like kind of mysterious and frustrating and painful. And I think sometimes just having a visual of what's going on and recognizing that sometimes it's just being very consistent with stretching and doing strengthening exercises for other muscle groups can make a big difference. It's not necessarily going to cure it, but it can make a really big difference for you. And this one, I like this little infographic. It's pretty cute. In this picture, they're showing the really uncommon case of the sciatic nerve piercing through the muscle. So you can really imagine in those cases that it causes it. You can imagine it causing some pain if that piriformis muscle is tight, which is often really a result of postural changes due to pregnancy or other things, holding children, things like that. that sciatic pain can cause a really sharp or tingly feeling all the way down actually to your feet. So that's partially why we release that particular muscle, because of the pain it can cause, and also because we want to kind of quiet it down while simultaneously activating our glute min and medius so that we can effectively help our bodies transition back into allowing our glute medius and minimus to do most of the work of stabilizing our pelvis most of the time, rather than letting our hip flexors and these other small, deep pelvic floor muscles take over and do all the work for them. So, what can we do to care for our glutes and the areas that are associated with them, like our pelvis and our hip joints? One, we can do consistent exercise, focusing on the extension of our hips and our back, which is going to encourage the activation of our glute medius and minimus. Two, we can release the ligaments and the muscle groups that like to take over for our glutes, like hip flexors, hamstrings, and our piriformis. And three, we can practice that neutral pelvic posture, like we talked about during our pelvic floor talk. So what I want, and I've done this, I want you, I'm going to give you another visualization here. So let me stop sharing actually so that you can see me a little better. So I talked about our bowl of fruit, right? I'll show you with both the bowl and the pelvis. So here you have your bowl. I lost my fruit. Yeah, here's our fruit in our bowl. And you can imagine you have your hip flexors on the front kind of your pelvic area. Some of them go through the pelvis and up your low back as well. But you can kind of imagine the TFL kind of holding on to the front of your pelvis like this, right? And so if you're in a neutral position, you're kind of like this, right? It's a front-loaded bowl of fruit. And let's say you start to do an anterior pelvic tilt. So you start to kind of, because you're pregnant, you have a lot of weight on the front of your body. You start to kind of tilt your pelvis a little bit like this, which makes sense, right? You got all that weight there. Your body is trying to hold you up now, right? You've got all this weight. You've got your pelvis tilting. It's like, oh, we need to help her stand up, right? She's trying to stand and she has a lot of weight in the front. So this TFL is going to hold on nice and tight. It's going to get nice and tight for you. And the glutes, which are back here, these nice, big, meaty glutes are like, TFL's holding on nice and tight for hers. They've got it. They got it pretty well. And so we're going to take a little bit of a back seat here. It doesn't seem like she needs us as much. Granted, this isn't a very accurate, our muscles aren't actually talking to each other, right? But it's a good way to think about it, right? Kind of like type A muscles that are like, all right, somebody's got to hold on, I'm going to do it. And then you have your type B muscles back here that are like, I got it, I'm just going to take a nap, right? And then we have our baby. There's still, we still have a lot of front loaded weight on the front in those postpartum periods. And our body is still transitioning to kind of being without a large human in our bodies. And so we may stay in this anterior pelvic tilt for a long period of time. And that TFL will just keep holding on. It just keeps on going. And our glutes are like, all right, well, I guess I don't really have to do very much. And so you can imagine this TFL, which isn't really meant to be doing all of this work, is like, oh my God, I'm so tight and I'm so tired. And so if we release those a little bit and we wake up our glutes, we give them a chance to kind of do the work they're supposed to, then we can kind of support our pelvis in the way that it needs. And you can also imagine having these nice big meaty glutes on the back that's helping to stabilize your pelvis right here on the back. And if you're having issues with your pelvic joints, which are back here, you have these muscles that are holding on nice and tight, holding that pelvis in place when you're doing things like walking, and your pelvis is kind of, this one doesn't rotate, but your pelvis is very slightly rotating side to side as you take steps. You have these nice strong muscles that are holding everything in place and supporting you in the way that they should be rather than just having something kind of hold on right here, right? So there's your visualization. I think that was actually the last slide. But you can see how when we are going to be practicing a lot of exercises that are focusing on those upper glutes. So when you think of your glutes, I know, again, I'm going to use my own body for a demonstration here. I know you think of like this meaty part down here, right? But we're going to be thinking about this right here. And so if you put your hands kind of on your hips, like if you're just going to do it like, you're just standing there looking at your kids with your hands on your hips, right? And then you have your thumbs back here. That's kind of the area that we're going to be activating with the exercises that we're doing. And one way I want you to think about it, rather than thinking of when we're doing some of these squat exercises, rather than thinking about pulling everything in and squeezing your butt together, we are going to think about opening everything up. And I think that is one of the hardest things for people to wrap their minds around, because we've been told for so long to hold our butts in, or if we're doing some big movement and using our glutes, we're taught to kind of squeeze together and tighten everything in rather than open things up. And so it might take some time for you to kind of really get to where you feel like that's actually what's happening in your body, and that's okay. It's just going to take time. It's a subtle difference, but it's one that really, like I said, those muscles help you to move your legs away from the center line of your body, right? And so we need to be kind of thinking of opening our pelvis up to the sides rather than bringing everything in. So don't worry, we're going to be working on it a lot. And hopefully by the end of this week, you'll feel like those glutes are more activated. And I really think you'll be able to tell. Like once you get it, you'll be like, oh, okay, I think this feels different. This isn't like a normal like glute contraction that I usually do, right? Okay, I'm gonna switch to my phone. You guys, the one thing we're gonna need this week is our bands. So if you have that little bag of bands, grab that. If you don't have it yet for some reason, don't worry about it today. Let me know and we can.
I've got mine.
You have yours, Megan? Oh, good.
Yeah.
That you're the one I was worried about.
I got them.
Okay, grab your bands. I want you to pick one. We are going to put them mid-thigh. Okay, so when you put them on, it's going to go up over your knees and between like your crotch area and your knee area. And so pick a band that you feel fits you well enough. You should have a little bit of tension there. And it shouldn't be so hard that you can't kind of you can't put tension on it. Okay. All right, I'm going to switch to my phone and we will get started. Okay. You're going to need your band and also a chair and your ball. So I should have probably told you all those things before, but I'll give you a few minutes here as I get set up as well. Remember, for your chair, you want something that your hips are higher than your knees, okay? So you can see here when I sit, my knees are slightly lower than my hips. Otherwise, if you're too low, it's going to be too hard to get up and down. It may be too hard to get up and down. All right. And we don't want that to be the limiting factor for you. Okay. So we're doing 15 minutes from now on for our workouts. They might get a little more challenging for you guys, especially with these glute workouts. You might feel a little bit of a burn, but it's going to be awesome. You're going to feel much more stable and you're going to feel so strong. All right, so you're going to put this mid thigh kind of halfway between your knees and your crotch. All right, and remember, pick one that feels like, you shouldn't be like not able to spread your legs apart. You just should have a little bit of tension on there. It's just mostly for a little bit of resistance, a little bit of external feedback, okay? We are going to start with just a quick little warm up. So stand up first. We're going to do crabs just to start. And I don't want you to worry too much about how you're doing it. We'll get more into that. We're just warming up for this, okay? And then we're going to move into the actual exercises. All right, here we go. So you're going to do a little squat here. And I want you to really start to think about opening out to the side with your pelvis. So what I like to tell people is imagining there's trash compactor walls coming in on your hips here, and you're trying to keep them open. So rather than squeezing your butt together, you're imagining pushing your trash compactor walls out to the side, okay? So don't worry too much. We're going to get into it more. I'm going to start my timer, and you're going to crab walk side to side. So your knees are bent. You're keeping your knees straight forward, keeping that perineum shining down behind your heels. We're just warming up. See what it feels like to kind of have that band on. Don't worry about things too much yet. It's going to feel funny. It's all good. We're going to be doing a lot of these. So just getting you familiarized. And then after this, we're going to sit in our chair. Don't forget to breathe. Feel your feet on the ground. Good. Shake it out a little bit. All right, sit down in your chair. I'm going to come here. Sit down in your chair. And I want you to sit with your feet flat on the ground. And we are just going to put a little tension on the band and hold it open, okay? And what I want you to do is put your hands on your hips right here. And remember, you're activating those muscles that are right where your thumb is. So basically what I want you to do is keep that band open, only using these muscles, so these upper glute muscles. Imagine putting or opening up those trash compactor walls like they're closing in right here, and you're trying to push them open. So you're not using your knees, you're not using your feet or your ankles to keep the band apart or to keep tension on the band. You're not using predominantly this area. I know it's going to feel like you are. But what I want you to really visualize and really think about is using these upper glute muscles, pushing them out to the side, almost imagining like the top of your femur is kind of coming out of its socket and coming out to the side, okay? So breathe, only at like 20%. You don't have to be at 100% right now. You're holding it open, holding it open. Holding, holding, holding. Breathe. Just relax your pelvic floor. Don't worry about your pelvic floor. Don't worry about brace blink rocketing. We're just thinking about our glutes today. Keeping tension on that band. Only using these muscles right here. See if you can feel them activating with your thumb. If you can't, it's okay. Don't worry. Good. Now relax. Shake it out a little bit. Now we're going to do that again, but we're going to pump open. Okay, so you're rather than holding it open, go ahead and start. You're going to pump open from these glute muscles, okay? I got bug friends in here with me. So you're pumping, pumping, and you can see my legs aren't moving a lot, but where I am really focusing on pumping from is this spot right here. Guys, the bugs, they're trying to join in, pumping out to the side. Tension and relax, tension and relax. Keep going. See if you can feel those muscles activating right where your thumb is. Good. Okay, now relax. Now what I want you to think about is you're going to activate that muscle and you're going to stand up as you're activating it, and then you're going to activate it in order to sit down. Okay, so these are get up, sit downs. Really easy, but just like this is what I want you to do in your day-to-day when you get up and sit down in a chair. I want you to think about pushing those trash compactor walls open as you come forward and come up and then sit down. So go ahead and try. If you want, if on your hips or hands on your hips isn't working for you, you can reach forward and then come down. Hey, Starly, I see you. So think about activating them as you stand up and then activate as you come down. Good. Now take a break, shake it out. We're going to try it again. Shake it out. Remember, we're only at like 20, 30%. All right, here we go. Trash compactor walls open, stand up. Trash compactor walls open, sit down. So if you want, you can kind of like relax at the top and then contract them again once you come down, or you can just kind of sustain that contraction all the way up and then all the way down. Good. Focus on those trash compactor walls, keeping them open as you come up and then down. Nice and slow. We're seeing if we can wake up those glutes. Good. All right. And relax. Now, we're going to make it a little bit harder. I'm going to have you stand up, and then you're going to almost sit, but you're not going to sit all the way, and then you're going to come back up, okay? So you're going to do trash compactor walls. Come on up. And then you're almost going to sit. Your butt's just going to kiss the chair. And then you're going to come back up. And the whole time I want you keeping those trash compactor walls open. All right, expand that pelvis out to the side. See if you can feel those muscles contracting with your thumb. You can imagine there's like two big red buttons right here, and you're trying to push them with your glutes. The key being you are really opening up that pelvis from the back, right? Good. Now take a little break, sit down, shake it out. Try not to use your ankles or your calves or your toes. See if you can shake them out. Here we go. We're going to do another set. So stand up and then come down. Don't sit all the way down. You're just kissing the chair and then coming back up. See if when you come up, you still have a slight bend in your knees. Your perineum is still shining behind. Remember to try to keep that neutral pelvis, even as you almost sit, but not quite. Keeping those trash compactor walls open, 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 open. Keep going. We got this. There might be a little burn. It's all right. It just means your muscles are working. They're doing what they should be. Good. All right, shake it out, and then we're going to come onto the ground now, okay? So move your chair out of the way. We're going to do some clamshells. Find a spot You're going to come onto your side and you're going to support your head. You're going to put your hand on your hip so you can feel those muscles again. And we are doing clamshell. So your knees are bent and then you're opening up your knees. You've probably seen this done before, kind of Jane Fonda-esque here. You're going to open up those knees and really this is like the most
hear
basic.
you, but maybe that's just me.
Can everybody else hear me okay? Okay. I don't know, Sarah, can you hear me now? You're just opening up. You might want to try logging. I don't know, she can't hear me, but. And then we're going to switch to the other side. You can just roll over, whatever you want to do. Better, Sarah? No, maybe not. All right, keep going. Make sure those hips are facing forward. Don't let them open up. Just keep your feet together. Feet are staying together and you're only opening up your knees apart. Good. Keep facing forward. Keep those knees or keep those hips facing forward. You got this. Remember, we're waking up our glutes here, so there's going to be a little bit of a burn. Good. Okay, we're switching back to the other side. I know. It's going to be great. I'm here with you. Hips forward. Put your hand on your hip. Feel that glute medius with your thumb. See if you can feel it working for you. Keep your feet together and just your knees open up. All right. Ooh, mine are getting a little shaky. I don't know about you guys. See if you can feel it. Keep those ribs down. Good job, everyone. Keep going. We're almost there. We got this. Good. Switch to the other side. It's a simple exercise, but it really targets that glute medius, which is the one we need. Wake it up. Tell it to get back to work. Almost there, almost there. Keep going. We got it, we got it. I know. You might be a little bit sore tomorrow, but it's gonna be okay. Remember that burn you feel is your muscles are working out. They're working for you. All right, take off your band. Good. Shake it out a little bit. You're going to come up, shake him out. And then we're going to stretch our piriformis, okay? So you're going to sit in your chair. We're going to do our left foot over our right knee, nice tall spine, and hinge forward. And this is stretching that piriformis muscle. And sometimes when we do this glute work, the piriformis still likes to take over. So it's good to kind of release it. We'll probably be doing some releases both before and after our workouts. And especially if you end up feeling any kind of sciatic pain or anything like that, make sure to reach out to me and we can make sure that you're doing what you need to do in order to take care of that. Go ahead and switch. Nice deep breath. we want to make sure that we're taking care of the things that our bodies need most. So if you're feeling any sharp pain, any tingling down your leg or anything like that, get in touch with me and we will find out what's going on. Nice tall spine, no rounding forward, and then hinge forward. Take a deep breath. Relax into it. See if you can hinge forward a little bit deeper. Good. All right, now come on up to standing. We don't need our bands for this. We're going to do crabs again. And this time, you've kind of woken up those glutes. We're going to see what it feels like. And we've kind of calmed down that piriformis. We're going to come into that crab position. Hands on your hips. I want you to kind of push down on your hips a little bit. And we're going to go side to side here. See if you can keep your pelvis nice and stable. If you can feel that expansion out to the side, feel those glutes working for you as you sit down into your hips. I like to imagine I'm like, you know, when you go to those nasty gas station potties and you're like, you don't want to sit on the seat, so you just hover. So you're imagining you're hovering over the toilet and you want to get everything in. Nice and tall spine. Good, almost there. Pick those feet up, feel them pick up and then come down on the ground. Up and then down, and then up and then down. Good. All right, shake it out. Shake it out. We did it. Good job. We have started glutes. Tomorrow we have our workout at 8. Make sure, I think pretty much for every workout we'll have bands. So make sure you have your bands. On the calendar, it says any other equipment that you need as well. So good job today. I'm here for an extra couple minutes if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow at 8. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Did that feel okay? Everybody good?
Oh, burned in a good way.
Good. Good. All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.